Before I talk about Jak 3, I want to recap my opinion of the first two games in the Jak and Daxter series. I really enjoyed Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, and I think it's one of the best 3D platformers of all time. It could do with a couple of tweaks, but it's still a great game. With Jak 2, I didn't enjoy playing through it as much. While it had great graphics, story and presentation, I found myself very annoyed and frustrated the majority of the time. This was either because of harsh checkpoints, cheap enemy attacks, loose aiming with the weapons, or drawn out missions. Now, I know most people would disagree with me, which was proven by the comment section on my Jak 2 review, but for me the game was a misstep that would have been amazing if they refined the gameplay a bit more. So let's move on to Jak 3. I wasn't too excited about playing this game, but I decided to check it out with the hope that they had learnt from their mistakes with Jak 2. Seeing how the game got slightly worse reviews, I wasn't too hopeful. Enough background though, let's have a look at the game itself. The story takes place after the events of Jak 2, where Jak and Daxter are still in the future. Even though Jak defeated the head of the Metalheads, they are still attacking Haven City. The people of the city will blame Jak for this, so he is exiled into the wastelands and left to die. He is found by a man called Deimos, who is the ruler of the city of Spargus. Jak then must prove himself to be worthy to live in the city, as well as find a way back to Haven City to save the day. The most impressive thing about the story is just how much there is to it. I only explained the beginning of the game, but there are a good number of twists and big plot events throughout. There are also a lot of characters who each have their own unique personalities, and thanks to the writing of the game, each cutscene is entertaining to watch. Daxter will mostly be telling jokes in each one, but they never detract from everything else that is going on. Jak 3 was the last game in the original Jak and Daxter trilogy, and it does a great job of telling a story big enough to end the series on, as well as keeping the original charm of the other two games. I personally like the story in Jak 2 a little bit better, as it involves Jak's jump to Haven City, but as a continuation of Jak 2's story, it's good in its own right. The core gameplay has changed very little from Jak 2. There are a large amount of gameplay styles, so let's start with platforming and shooting. During certain levels, all you have to do is make some jumps while fighting off enemies. Just like the other Jak games, the platforming is really fun as the controls work well and you have plenty of moves to use. The platforming is as challenging as you want it to be. It's easy to miss a jump and to be killed, but the controls and the level design are good enough to mean that if you die, it is your own fault. When it comes to the shooting, very little has been changed. You still can't strafe or lock onto enemies, so you have to rely on the loose auto-aim. While I hated using the guns in Jak 2, in Jak 3 I had no problem with them. In Jak 2 there were many times where strafing would have made avoiding gunfire much easier, but that's no longer the case. Enemies are scattered in levels but don't attack in the same annoying ways, so as long as you're quick to shoot, you should never have a problem with the aiming. It's a minor change in the levels, but the enemy placement being more thought out and less cheap makes enjoying the game a lot easier. Something else that makes the guns more fun are the new weapons. The old weapons return, but now each has mods to them, so instead of only having 4 weapons, you now have 12. For example, the shotgun has a mod that makes it so you fire at the floor instead of forward, so you can get enemies around your feet. The great thing about the new mods is that none of them focuses on making precise shots. It's more aim in the general direction of enemies and have fun blowing them away. With these new mods, it means that the shooting is now mindlessly fun, and with the new range of weapons, it means you aren't as restricted with the gun choices as you were in Jak 2. It would have been nice if they added in a proper lock-on system, but adding in crazier weapons and tweaking the enemies is just as good. The other main gameplay style is the driving. As Jak is now in the wasteland, he can drive cars as opposed to the hover vehicles. The majority of the cars have turrets attached to them, you can hop over gaps with them, and you can also use boosting. Using cars is much more fun than using the hover vehicles. While the aiming with the turret could be improved, it doesn't matter as you have infinite ammo and no longer have to use your main weapons. You also get a handbrake which works well, which means you can get around tight corners without too much trouble. The cars don't control perfectly, as it's a bit too easy to get stuck on a rock and you will find yourself spinning out after landing jumps. This isn't too big of a deal though, as the wasteland is mostly an empty desert, so you don't have to worry about being perfect at driving. You can just drive around like a maniac and have a good time. The number of races you have to do during the story has also been greatly reduced, thank God, and there's also no longer as many ways to instantly fail them. The open world structure returns from Jak 2. The game takes place in a large open area, and to progress you have to drive to a certain character, accomplish whatever objectives they set out for you, and then drive to the next character marked on your minimap. What's interesting is that halfway through the game, Jak returns back to Haven City, so half the open world is made up of the sandy wastelands, but the other half is taken directly from Jak 2. One complaint about Jak 2 I had is that the open world was so big that driving to the different missions got boring fast. This thankfully has been fixed. You still have to spend time travelling in between each mission, but you never have to go that far. In the wastelands, everything is either very close or you can get to it quickly using one of the cars. In Haven City, the size of the place has been greatly reduced, meaning less downtime. Now, there isn't anything wrong with a bit of downtime in a game like this, but there needs to be a good balance of this, which thankfully Jak 3 gets right. While Haven City is taken from Jak 2, the place itself has been heavily altered. In Jak 2, it was a city full of people, but now it's been turned into a battlefield. You still have to use hover vehicles to get about, but thanks to the lack of other cars, there being no police system, and the fact that the people fighting won't attack you, it is cool driving around the place. Compared to modern games, Jak 3 does have a bit of a basic open world, but thanks to how much fun it can be driving over sandhills in the wastelands, and the amount of soldiers you see fighting each other in Haven City, it does still hold up. Dark Jak makes a return. This is where you fill up your Dark Eco meter and you can turn into Dark Jak, who can't use weapons but has powerful melee attacks. New to Jak 3 is Light Jak, who can restore health, slow down time, create a shield, and even fly. I personally never use Dark Jak as I find using the guns is more effective than hitting enemies, but I found Light Jak to be very useful. You have to collect enough Light Eco to use Light Jak, but being able to heal yourself is something I would have greatly appreciated in Jak 2. I didn't use any of the other abilities that much, but just like with the gun mods, it's awesome having so much choice with the combat. Overall, this game's biggest strength is the variety it offers. Each mission will usually present something new, so if you're not the biggest fan of one gameplay style, it doesn't matter as the next mission will probably have you do something completely different. The most impressive thing though is the level of polish this game manages to maintain, even though it mixes things up so regularly. This game feels so full with content, but unfortunately it is the shortest game in the series. It took me around 10 hours to beat, so it isn't by any means a short game. I also need to mention that this game just isn't as stressful to play as Jak 2. The game is a lot more generous with checkpoints, so you don't have to waste your time playing through the same annoying part over and over. It's still a challenging game though, as I did die a good number of times, it's just no longer frustrating. Jak 3 is the game that Jak 2 should have been. It's got a solid story, a good open world, and pull off each and every gameplay style it attempts. Instead of being a mess, it refines what needed to be refined, delivering a satisfying and enjoyable experience. It's good to see that the Jak games went out on a high note, despite Jak 3 not selling as many copies as the first two games. I still prefer Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy as I prefer that style of game, but Jak 3 is good in its own right. My score is 8.5 out of 10. Thanks to small changes throughout, Naughty Dog managed to take the template of Jak 2 and turn it into something great.